and this is the 11th episode of the Mendez Movie Report Podcast, looking at everything in film news that caught my attention for the week of July 6th, 2026. I am your host and film critic and namesake Luis A. Mendez. And on this episode, I will reveal my mid-year outlook on the Best Picture Oscar race, doing a update to my initial projections from a month ago. I review Minions and Monsters. I react to the Astras Midseason Awards. I will also be talking about the ongoing drama with the film adaptation of Children of Blood and Bone. Uh, Also, in regard to the finger pointing that's already going on regarding Supergirl's failure. And of course, as always, I'll be looking at the latest box office news along with what's coming next to theaters and streaming. And just straight off the bat, I am recording this at a hectic time. There's so much going on as I'm recording this. First of all, it is scorching hot here in the state of Florida. It is scorching. We're scorching hot across various parts of the country, but it is scorching hot, and I need to keep the AC on. That's how bad it is. So apologies for anything that might affect the audio of the podcast for this episode. I do have the noise cancellation on, but we'll have to see how much that helps. Also, apparently my newborn daughter has not been easy to deal with today. So, Mama, the current wife, would like me to eventually take care of her for the evening to give her a rest. So I'm kind of under that stress and pressure to finish up this podcast recording. That's two. Three. Um, this is I am recording this in the middle of the first social reactions to the Odyssey dropping. So that's going to be kind of taking my attention as I'm trying to record. Uh so there is a lot of chaos that I'm dealing with at the moment while trying to record this episode. And it's probably a good thing that in that starting next week podcast the podcast episodes will get a little bit shorter than they've been. I'll address that at the end of the episode as to what I mean about that. But we got a lot to talk about, so let's get straight to it. And meanwhile, I will be updating talking about some of these first reactions to the Odyssey as they drop, as I record, even though this is going to come out first thing Tuesday morning. But let's get going. We got a very interesting 11th episode here. We got a lot to cover. All right, so July 4th weekend is kicking off. The summer blockbuster season is in full swing, and everyone and their mom is rolling out best films of the year so far lists. So, yes, my dear listener, we've officially hit the midpoint of 2026. And with that half year mark comes the usual wave of early Oscar forecasting from major outlets. So I figured it's a good time to update my outlook on the Best Picture race for the 99th Academy Awards, celebrating the best in film from 2026. The Best Picture board, has been trimmed from 50 slots down to 45 as the room for error tightens a bit. On one hand, Project Hail Mary has emerged as a consensus pick among critics and general audiences for the best film of the year so far. You've also got films like Obsession and The Invite generating the kind of passion that can realistically carry them into the lineup. Then there are titles like Disclosure Day and Michael, which come with some real headwinds. Audiences are lukewarm on the former, but critics are very largely dismissive of the latter. And then there's the middle tier with I Swear, Pressure, The Drama, and Tuner, all well reviewed and all reasonably liked by audiences, but not yet showing the level of industry wide traction that typically translates into a Best Picture slot. Finally, you've got the Cannes contingent with All of a Sudden, Coward, Fatherland, Fjord, Minotaur, and The Black Ball, all still very much in play for a lineup spot. But the real shape of the race is still to come in the back half of the year. The Odyssey, which I still view as the early default frontrunner to win it all, is finally set to begin screenings for critics in the coming weeks. Warner Brothers will be fielding two major contenders in Digger and Doom Part 3, with the former potentially putting Tom Cruise in the Oscar conversation, and the latter attempting a Return of the King style run. Searchlight Pictures looking to rebound after their disastrous 2025. They could land two contenders in Wild Horse Knives and Behemoth, the former known quantity, and the latter still a question mark in terms of release timing. Neon will look to extend its streak with Cannes winners Fjord and All of a Sudden hoping to keep multiple international feature contenders in play. Movie also has a strong slate of international titles to push into the conversation. A24, meanwhile, could be sitting on an embarrassment of riches with the debut, The Invite, and Club Kid, all potential players. Focus Features faces a real test in whether Sense and Sensibility can break through as a series contender, or whether they'll need to lean on their genre slate like Obsession and Werewolf to stay in the mix. Sony has The Social Reckoning and the follow up to The Social Network positioning itself for a major awards push. And Netflix is already making sure that you know that the Black Ball is their top priority. And that's only a slice of the possible contenders in play. There are also distributor-less films that could break through as major players, such as Pride at Heaven, Elsinore, and Jack of Spades among them, as well as smaller indie hopefuls like the rivals of Messiah King and Josephine, having a little bit of buzz still left over. In the last month plus since my previous update, not much has fundamentally changed, though the questions heading into the second half of the year remain wide open. Below, you will find the 45 films I currently see as having a viable best picture path, broken down into 5 separate tiers. Given this will be the final projections update until I finally see the front runner for myself. I'm recording this on Monday. I will be seeing the Odyssey next Monday. I will be back with an update before month's end to try and reflect on how the reception to the Odyssey, what it did to its status as an Oscar contender. So let's break this down like I did last time. Let's talk about there are 5 tiers here, 45 slots, gone down from 50 to 45. Now, what movies have dropped from the board, from the Best Picture board? Well, the movies that have dropped from the Best Picture board are A Long Winter, because I don't know if that's coming out this year, and I'm not getting any more the vibes. I'm not getting vibes about that movie being a potential contender. Andrew Haigh has yet to really break through. I mean, like All of Us Strangers got pretty good reviews and couldn't get it done. A Man of His Time, I've dropped off the board. It definitely seems to have been a movie that didn't leave much of a mark with Can. Hope seems like it's going to be more of a genre thing and a commercial thing for Neon. I don't get the sense anymore that there's any chance of this being a interesting genre contender. I Love Boosters. I finally caught I Love Boosters. It was a little too much for me, and I can see now why it doesn't seem to have the same passion as Sorry to Bother You, which sort of had, some support that year in 2018. Um, but it's definitely not a awards contending movie. Unfortunately for Neon, who were kind of wondering if they could turn into this everything everywhere thing. Ink, I got off the board because apparently that's coming out in 2027, and I literally found that out as I posted my initial projections. So already, as I released my initial projections, a movie got off the board. Possible Love. I'm not really buying that that can be a contender. Yeah, I'm not getting the vibes of that any at all anymore. Rose, I'm keeping an eye on this as potentially getting Sandra Hüller a acting nom, but I don't think movies really going to be that aggressive with campaigning. This Teenage Sex and Death at Camp Miasma. Yeah, everything that I've heard about this is just making me think that this will not be the breakthrough for James Sherburne. And quite frankly, given their type of movies and the way that they've played with me as someone who generally has taste like the Academy, I don't think there's any. I honestly don't know if they'll ever, excuse me, they'll ever um make something that accessible. So let's start with tier one, the predicted 10. So what I have right now is I still have the Odyssey at number one. And as I'm recording this, the first social reactions are coming in. And I'm feeling good. I'm feeling pretty good about having it at number one. I'm not saying that it's gonna win Best Picture, but it's not a crazy thing to have it at number one. The reactions I'm seeing are absolutely dynamite. I've seen almost universal praise. Now, it is the early reactions. The early reactions tend to be the best. As the sample size gets bigger, you do wait to see if they'll get worse. Um, but the reactions that I am hearing, especially from some trusted people, is that this is the real deal, that this really could contend. Ann Thompson of IndieWire, who I take extremely, extremely serious her analysis. She's one of the best in the game. She is claiming that this is the legitimate best picture movie to beat at this moment. So I'm really excited about that, and I will be seeing the movie as I'm recording this on Monday. I will be seeing the movie next Monday. La Bola Negra, I have at number two, or the Black Ball. Netflix made sure that they want people to refer to this as La Bola Negra. I honestly don't mind calling it the Black Ball. I don't care other people call it the Black Ball. Everybody can call it what they want to call it. It's the same thing. La Bola Negra translates to the Black Ball. The Black Ball translates to La Bola Negra. I really do think this has to change. I'm the reason this is bumped up a couple spots from last month. I think this has a chance to go all the way. I really do. But the problem is, will they be willing to go with a Netflix movie? I have been wondering if the narrative of our winner this year is going to be a discovery like Everything Everywhere in Coda, unless a it's their turn sort of thing. Digger, I have a number three. I We're gonna get the first trailer next week as I record this. If I have Tom Cruise winning actor, I need to assume Digger's gonna be a major contender. Wild Horse Night at number four. I know some people are predicting this as their number one right now, thinking it could be Martin McDonagh's moment, and that the movie's subject could be something that the Academy gravitates to, because it has to deal with like CIA and assassinations. Uh, Project Hail Mary is now in the top five at number five. It is the consensus pick for the favorite film halfway through the year. I think it's about to take a hit from the Odyssey on that, but I just don't understand why people are trying to drive some narrative that people are going to forget about this movie. This movie is still going to have some people saying that it's their favorite movie of the year come the end of the year. I rewatched it this over the weekend, and it still holds up as my favorite of the year so far. It I think Project Hail Mary is perfectly safe to get into Best Picture. I got Fjord at number six. I do still have wonders about some potential discourse with that movie, but I do have it at number six. The only question is, what will happen with the if critics push all of a sudden like they did Drive My Car? Will it hurt Fjord, or will it simply join Fjord in the lineup? Sense and Sensibility, I have number seven. This is a bit of a gamble from me, and it did slip a couple spots. We got the trailer. I gotta be honest with you, that trailer is giving me vibes of a Victorian Abdul from 2017, a period piece that comes and goes, or even like a Miss Harris Goes to Paris. It comes and goes. There are people. It gets good reviews. People generally like it, but they're not. It's people aren't necessarily saying it's one of their favorite films of the year, and it does well at the BAFTA long list, and it somehow manages a costume nom. That's what's giving looking at it. But the way Focus still has this, um, r- you know, scheduled, they're probably going to premiere it at Telluride. They're probably going to try to go in placing for the TIFF Audience Award, if not even winning the TIFF Audience Award for a second year in a row. And they're releasing it in October. Focus Features knows what they're doing when it comes to these movies, to campaigning for awards. It is so interesting to me that they seem to be hinting that this might be their top priority. That being said, if it underwhelms, Obsession is sitting right there. There's also the possibility of Werewolf. There's also the possibility of The Uprising. And there's also the possibility of, do they pick something up that doesn't have a distributor yet? The debut I have at number eight, I went ahead and bumped this into the lineup, knocking out Disclosure Day. The debut I have at number eight. But the thing is, right now, there is a moment happening for the invite that I cannot ignore. there are some people declaring the invite their favorite movie of the year. That's the kind of passion you need to get into Best Picture. And if the debut underwhelms, the invite is sitting right there for A24. So I'm gonna wait to see how this is, how does this play at the fall festivals? Do audiences vibe with this? Do critics want to push this? Doom Part 3, I have a number 9. I'm still being cautious with this one because of the PTSD from what happened last year. But I do still think Doom Part 3 has better upside than Wicked for Good and Avatar Fire and Ash, as much as I love those movies. So I am keeping it in the lineup for now. And at number 10, I do have The Social Reckoning. I know there's been a lot of conversation about how much the marketing has been working for them, about how divisive Sorkin's movies are getting as his career chugs along. But I have been wondering, we always get we always get a divisive contender in the Best Picture lineup. Why couldn't it be The Social Reckoning? It doesn't have to be The Social Reckoning. Fjord could end up having a bunch of discourse and be divisive. The debut might be seen as a mid by some, hard, highbrow cinephiles and critics. But right now, it feels to me like The Social Reckoning has the best um it feels like it has the best look of that kind of movie that boomers and people with very mainstream taste push. I will tell you, as someone who digs Sorkin more than film Twitter does, I have not had an issue. I didn't have an issue with the trailer. I didn't have an issue with the gimmick of trying to replicate the original's posters, and my tastes do tend to be closer to the academies than film Twitter, so we'll see how I feel about it. Tier 2, the underbubble contenders. The invite has jumped all the way from number 31 to number 11. I did almost put this in the predicted lineup, but I want to wait and see. But so far, this is getting the kind of reception and passion that it needs. All of a sudden, at number 12, Behemoth at number 13, Obsession at number 14. For all four of these movies that I just mentioned, Invite, all of a sudden, Behemoth, Obsession, it does come down to the fact of the top contenders on paper for their studios. Do they underwhelm? And if they don't underwhelm, is there a way that they can push through into the lineup? Disclosure Day has went from me predicting it to get into it being at number 15, and quite frankly, I might be being nice to it. Look, I love this movie. It's going worst case scenario. I will be shocked if it's not at least in my top 20 of the year. I really, really like this movie. It's mid-tier Spielberg, but mid-tier Spielberg is tends to still be, at least in my opinion, among the better films of the year. The problem is that the audience scores for this movie are so mediocre. And I can't ignore that. Just the movie just simply did not click for a lot of mainstream audiences. Critics seem to like this movie the more than audiences do. I still think we'll get some tech noms. I wouldn't even be surprised if it like somehow finds a way to pop in, like, I don't know, it somehow sneaks into the HCA, one of the HCA Best Picture lineups. It did get picked by by the Astras for their mid-season awards, but at the moment, it just feels like it's tanking. At number 16, Cry to Heaven. I don't even know if that movie's coming out this year. Number 17, Jack of Spades. There's rumors that Focus might have picked that up. Club Kid at number 18, but Club Kid's gonna need to like deal with the fact that A24 might have two other contenders that they prioritize over it. Being Human at number 19, and The Adventures of Cliff Booth at number 20. For the third tier, the dark horses on the cusp of being taken serious, I have Michael at number 21. And as much as the Michael fans don't want to hear it, I still do not believe it's even a bubble contender. I think it could be on the verge of being taken serious, but it's really gonna have little room for error, and it's gonna have to be a strictly non-critic thing. Now, F1 got in strictly not being a critic thing, but F1 had good reviews, and even those critics were giving it nominations, and according to Critics' Choice, wins for tech categories. At number 2, I do have Elsinore. There's been some talk about this movie. I added it to the board that it could be this potential low-key contender to keep an eye out on. I've known people who have seen the test screenings for this. I'm aware of a letterbox user I follow who has taste like the Academy and watches a lot of test screenings. They currently have this as their number 2 film of the year, only behind Project Hail Mary. That person also has Digger at number 3, so keep that in mind. And there is talk about Andrew Scott potentially this being a vehicle for him to finally get that Oscar nomination that he keeps getting close to, but no cigar. At number 23, there's Fatherland, Coward at 24, Minotaur at number 25. I just don't buy that movie is going to get a contender in there, but we'll see. This might be before I start seeing them climb up on my board in future updates. I have Werewolf at number 26 to Uprising at number 27. At number 28, being added to the board is Artificial. There's a lot of discourse around this film and about what it has to say about AI and the people that it talks about. Amazon wanted to get rid of it. Neon picked it up, but Neon has a bunch of other things to contend with. So I don't know if they're going to be able to get the movie into Best Picture. A Place in Hell enters the board at number 29. This simply because it should have been on my radar last month. This is a potential Michelle Williams vehicle for an Oscar nom. Paper Tiger has climbed up to number 30. Um, Fourth tier, The Long Shots with a Slim Path. I have Saturn Return at number 31. I have The Rivals of Messiah King dropping to number 32 and Josephine dropping to number 33. It does feel like these movies are too small and have too small a distributor. I would love it if one of them proved me wrong, and I'm actually really excited to check out Rivals of Messiah King, but I just don't think this is the year that Black Bear Pictures breaks through. At number 34, I have Prima Facie, which may or may not get Cynthia Erivo another Oscar nom. Tony at number 35, Primetime at number 36, The Drama at number 37, Tuner at number 38, I Play Rocky at number 39, and Madden at number 40. Again, those are the long shots with a slim path. And finally, the fifth tier, the long shots looking for a path. I have Pressure at number 41, I Swear at number 43, Godzilla Minus Zero at 43, Whale Fall at number 44, and The Dog Stars at 45. Massively doubt that any of these movies are going to be contending for Best Picture when it comes to it. But, maybe some kind of path here will open up, though. I really don't think it's going to happen for Pressure. Things are looking rough for I Swear, even with the great audience scores and its BAFTA performance. I mean, Whale Fall maybe can make some noise. Maybe The Dog Stars will surprise. Minus Zero is going to have a lot of things go right for it. But that's the way I have it. So those are my Oscar projections a month after my initial projections. That's how I feel midway through the year. The Odyssey, I think, is still the movie to beat. There's still a lot of jostling going on around who's going to end up being the top and best priority for some of the indie studios. But if these early reactions that I'm reading as I record this for the Odyssey are right, it may end up just being too big to fail. But I will be updating these in a few weeks before the month is even over. We'll be updating this to take in the full Odyssey reaction because I do want to see more reactions to it. I want to see the actual reviews. I want to see the box office. We'll see what happens with that. But at the moment, it does seem like the Odyssey is still at the start the movie to beat. And we will see how this Oscar season evolves as the summer blockbuster season continues. All right, so let's jump from talking about the future of the Oscars and talk about what happened this past weekend. And we kicked that off with having a conversation around Minions and Monsters, the biggest release of the July 4th weekend. Though it's a little weird to me that this ended up being the biggest release among the big studios, but I don't know, it's been a weird year for that. I mean, like you got like Mortal Kombat 2 on Mother's Day weekend, Toy Story 5 on Father's Day weekend. It's been kind of weird the choices we've seen for these big holiday weekends. But Minions and Monsters, my review is already up that you could read over there on the Substack on the website. And via Letterboxd, the plot for this is the rambunctious, ridiculous, and totally true story of how the Minions conquered Hollywood, became movie stars, lost everything, unleashed monsters onto the world, and then banded together to try and save the planet from the mayhem they had just created. So, um, let I do want to get this out of the way, uh, before I get into this movie. I'm 37 years old. Okay. And even though I honestly feel like I'm 10 years younger, and I have been mistaken for being younger than I am at an age where Despicable Me and Minions movies don't resonate with me the way they do with younger moviegoers who came of age during the 2010s. I visited Universal Orlando enough times and to experience the Minions ride and see endless sea of Minions merchandise. And while I definitely find the little yellow guys funny, I've never had the same attachment to them that I have to the Disney Renaissance films or the Pixar classics that I grew up with. And it doesn't help that I consider many of those, Disney and Pixar movies to be among the greatest animated films ever made, whereas the Minions universe has mostly produced movies that are, at worst, just okay and easily forgettable, and at best, decent entertainment, but not masterpieces of any kind. Um, what has surprised me over the years, though, is the way that the two franchises that are part of this universe have kind of moved in opposite directions. Despicable Me proper, the Despicable Me proper films have steadily depreciated in value, in my opinion. I give the first two films. I think the first two films are B pluses. The third and fourth are more like B minuses. Um, and quite frankly, I gave those last two a little bit more grace just because of the fact that they're aimed primarily at kids. I do have a bit of a franchise curve with my reviews. Now, the Minions movies, on the other hand, have somehow managed to improve with each installment, in my opinion. And Minions and Monsters does continue that trend. Without a question, it is the strongest film in the spin-off franchise. And to be honest with you, I think there's a conversation to be had that might be the strongest film of this Despicable Me universe, period. Um, Now, the biggest reason why is that this movie feels like it was made by people who genuinely love movies. The first half is an absolute delight for film nerds. It's essentially a love letter to the history of cinema. It takes audiences from the silent era through the golden age of Hollywood. It weaves the minions into some of the most iconic moments in film history. Like, there are nods to the Lumiere brothers, A Trip to the Moon, Buster Keaton, Fritz Lang, the Warner Brothers, Casablanca, Citizen Kane, and even Babylon, among plenty of others. The references come fast enough that cinephiles will constantly be spotting something new in the background, but they're never so overbearing that younger audiences will feel left out by them. In fact, one of the biggest strengths of Minions and Monsters has successfully placed at both audiences. Kids will get exactly what they came for in goofy slapstick, ridiculous physical comedy, and the lovable chaos that has made these little yellow weirdos international icons. Adults, meanwhile, get a surprising amount of movie history, clever industry jokes, and even a handful of Oscar references that made me laugh much harder than I expected. There's even a Citizen Kane gag that absolutely had me howling in my seat. And I did appreciate that the movie understands exactly how long it needs to be. It's under 90 minutes and never overstays its welcome. Family films don't always need to chase these 2-hour run times. And Minions and Monster gets it. It tells its story, it lands its jokes, it gets out before it wears thin. That said, the second half isn't quite as strong as the first. Once the movie shifts from its celebration to cinema's history, it leans much harder into the more frantic, zany stuff of the Minions and their type of comedy. Your mileage will vary from there. Some of the gags land for me, while others felt like the kind of random chaos that's always been a bit hit or miss with this franchise. The kids in my audiences absolutely adored every second of it, so it's clearly accomplishing what it sets out to do. I will say I was also less invested in the subplot, though, involving Dort the robot and his romance with a women's suffragette. Um, because that was with like the Minions quest to make, like that felt more like in the Minions quest to make a typical Minions movie compared to the other main storyline that I like more about the love letter cinema. It does occasionally interrupt the momentum of the main story, though I have to admit it does pay off the Dort storyline with a really funny gag towards the finale. And look, no, Minions and Monster isn't operating at the same level as Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, which remains one of the gold standards of modern animated family films from DreamWorks, but it doesn't really need to. It's a funny, charming, consistently entertaining, and far more lovingly crafted than I expected going in. And more importantly, it continues the unlikely trend of the Minions movies getting better, while the main Despicable Me movies have been heading in the opposite direction. I certainly was not expecting to walk out of this saying this, but here we are. Minions and Monsters is a blast for both little ones and cinephiles alike. Kids will leave laughing at the slapstick. Adults who appreciate the affection for film history, and movie lovers will have a great time catching all the classic Hollywood references hidden throughout. It may not reinvent animated filmmaking, but it's easily the best Minions movie yet, and surprisingly the best creature feature we've gotten so far this year. So, to recap, the pros. The first half is a love letter to the history of cinema throughout the silent era to the golden age of Hollywood. An easy choice to take the little ones to, which the adults will be able to enjoy for the most part as well. Gets in and gets out in less than an hour and a half. The cons. Second half is much more disjointed and relies on more zany Minions comedy that can be hit or miss, though the kids will love it. I wasn't as invested in the side plot of Dort the robot finding love with this women's suffragette protester as I was with our main Minions trying to make a movie, but at least it leads to a fun gag in the big finale. My final grade for Minions and Monsters, well, I should say final, my initial grade for Minions and Monsters, though I think will probably end up staying there, is a pretty decent B plus. If you have not seen this movie, but you know your kids are begging you to see it, I do think this is a fun time at the movies. I'd probably say go see it in a matinee and save some money, like catch it on a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, or something like that. But I do give it a B plus. This is a good movie for the most part. It's not Toy Story 5, which is easily the best animated film of the year so far, in my opinion, but it's definitely not the Mario slop. This is like I would still rank Hoppers a little bit higher than this, but yeah, I overall really decent things to say about Minions and Monsters. One of the surprises of the year, in my opinion. All right. Now, that being said, it's time to talk about the past week and in new movies overall. Again, the biggest release over the big America 250 July 4th weekend was Illumination's Minions and Monsters, which garnered the best critical reviews of the franchise, but only okay audience scores that seem to have contributed to a solid opening weekend at the box office that nonetheless underperformed previous entries. Among critics, they earned, at least last I checked, a 91% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 69 on Metacritic. Among audiences, it posted 76% of the popcorn meter, 3.3 on Letterboxd, 6.6 on IMDb, and an A minus cinema score. It's a bit ironic that just the franchise delivers its best reviewed film, it ends up with less than stellar word of mouth and box office, due in part to what I think is simple franchise fatigue now that it's approaching 2 decades of existence. As much as I have fun with this latest installment, and you just heard my B plus review for it, I think it would probably be for the best for Illumination to take at least a break from this universe for a little while. Meanwhile, Angel Studios counter programmer for the weekend in Young Washington seems to have been met with the typical culture war debates and ideological positioning that almost all of the studio's films generate. Critics are giving this one mixed reviews, while audiences seem to have liked it for the most part. Granted, those audience scores are likely boosted by an older, more right-leaning crowd that wanted to vote with their wallets and probably walked into this theater already prepared to call it a masterpiece, but that's often the case with Angel Studio releases. They certainly have their share of awful stinkers and outright propaganda films, in my opinion, but their biopics, they tend to land in the middling but inoffensive category that I'm usually okay with. I did watch this towards the end of the weekend, and that's pretty much where I landed. It's okay. It's an inoffensive movie that probably would have been better suited for streaming. Um, it's like this movie did not. I didn't feel like this needed to be in a theater. Like needed to have the theatrical experience. Um, Angel Studios has given us much worse than this. I do, however, get annoyed every time one of their movies ends by asking audiences to buy another ticket for someone else just to boost the box office. Among critics, it earned a 60% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 50 on Metacritic. Among audiences, it received 92% of the popcorn meter, a 2.6 on Letterbox, which, to be frank, given that site's user base, I wouldn't be surprised if that score in particular was actually reviewed bomb in a negative sense. 7.2 on IMDb and an A cinema score. So again, I thought it was a middling but okay movie. I can understand why some will walk away finding it mediocre and be on the negative side to it, but I don't know. I don't think it's worth all the discourse, and it's wild how these Angel Studios movies are wicked, and which I understand why they get positioned like that. Angel Studios, they obviously have they're a faith-based studio. They have bias towards certain type of politics. Netflix, meanwhile, made the interesting decision to make the latest entry in a British franchise its big July 4th release with the straight-to-streaming Enola Holmes 3, which is receiving the weakest critical reviews and audience scores of the trilogy, suggesting it'll probably be best to end the series here. Among critics, it earned a 73% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 60 on Metacritic. Among audiences, it posted a 54% of the popcorn meter last I checked. It might even be lower already. 3.0 on Letterboxd and a 5.8 on IMDb. I'd agree that this is easily the weakest of the trilogy, has a noticeably cheaper look. It has some really rough editing and a few performative moments that made me roll my eyes. That said, it still leans on the good enough side for me because it makes better use of its ensemble than the previous two films, and it actually feels like a proper mystery adventure rather than simply another Enola Holmes escapade. So weirdly enough, it's sort of filmmaking wise easily the worst of the three, but story wise for me personally, I kind of dug it more than the other three, even with certain performative things in there. But yeah, so that's a wrap there on what happened this past week. And Minions 3 was, or say Minions and Monsters was the big thing. Some folks decided to go ahead and check out Young Washington for July 4th weekend. And for whatever reason, Netflix decided to give us a British um, produced film as the big 4th of July America 250 offering that they had. Now, in regards to the next upcoming weekend in new movies, the next few weekends will see very little counter programming from smaller studios as we enter the heart of the summer blockbuster season. The biggest release of the upcoming weekend is undoubtedly the live action remake of Moana. Word on the street is that it's tracking a bit below Disney's hopes, especially with Moana 3 reportedly already in the works. It does make me wonder if audiences are starting to tire of these live action remakes in general, though Lilo and Stitch was a huge box office success. I want to say that was last year. Personally, I'd be lying if I said I was excited for this one the way I was for some other past live action remakes from Disney. The marketing makes it look very green screen heavy. There's a glossy aesthetic that feels more AI generated than anything else. Um, Meanwhile, Dwayne the Rock Johnson, who's doing Maui here, like he did the voice for, comes across as completely checked out. I mean, almost like he's already thinking about that Martin Scorsese Hawaii set crime film that he's supposed to be reportedly set to begin filming next year. Like, he looks completely checked out according to the trailers. And, as usual from Disney of late, there isn't a press screening in my market, so I'll be watching this one with general audiences. But this will be one of those rare weekends with not one but two major studio releases, because alongside Moana, we'll also get the latest entry in the Evil Dead franchise, Evil Dead Burn. This reportedly a standalone story set within the Evil Dead universe with no major ties to 2023's Evil Dead Rise. I've generally enjoyed the Evil Dead films, but I also can't claim to be a massive fan of the franchise, so I'm expecting to like this one, even if I'm not overly excited for it either. Warner Brothers also isn't bothering to hold a press screening in my market. So this will be another one I'll be catching with general audiences. So very simple. This upcoming weekend, it's you're not. I wasn't able to find anything from Netflix. I wasn't able to find any small stuff that really I thought piqued my interest to note. Basically, the big releases are simply you're either going to go check out Moana or you're either going to go check out Evil Dead Burn. Personally, because it is my job, I will be checking out both. All right, let's bring it back to award season talk again, because with us now uh, at the halfway point of the year, the biggest Oscar prediction sites and markets have started converging on their initial forecast. Gold Derby launched its prediction center with The Odyssey emerging as the best picture frontrunner, though Project Hail Mary has seen a notable surge in support there, though I wouldn't be surprised if The Odyssey is about to get a bump off of these reactions. Meanwhile, the next Best Picture team unveiled its first consensus predictions, with The Odyssey also coming on top. Award Expert has had predictions open for a while now, and its community likewise has The Odyssey as the consensus favorite. And like I said the other week, the first stage of award season campaigning is getting closer and closer. This summer, you ready to realize in about 2 months, we will already be having conversations around fall festivals dropping. In about a month or so, we'll probably have a good picture or outline of what kind of contenders we're going to be seeing at the fall festivals. Um, so if you are into predicting the Oscars, if you are into following the race, it's time to take things serious because these markets are launched. These pundits are already giving out their initial projections. My update to my initial ones are out. Things are award season is practically about already getting started. Following up from last week, the 2026 Astra Midseason Awards announced their winners, and at this point in the year, the only category that really grabs my attention when it comes to this awards is Best Picture. They awarded the prize to Project Hail Mary, which doesn't come as much of a surprise. This is a consensus front runner at the halfway mark of the year. What did catch me off guard, though, was the runner-up. I expected Obsession to take that spot, but instead it went at the invite. The film seems to be having a real moment, and it's making me think it's on the verge of emerging as a major awards contender once the proper Oscar season kicks into gear later this year. You can read Next Best Pictures coverage. I highly recommend you always check out that site. It's there's a lot of great sites out there covering the awards season. There's you got Awards Radar, you got Awards Watch, there's Awards Daily. Next Best Picture though is my personal favorite, and you can go. I would recommend you go to their website to catch the full Astra Mid-Season Award results if you're interested in more than just the Best Picture race. But like I said, Project Hail Mary makes complete sense to me, especially with the taste of that critics group and where that movie is positioned halfway through the year. But I really, really thought with the taste of that group, that with the way the movie's been received, Obsession would be the runner-up. But no, they went with the invite, and the invite does feel like it's having a moment. But like I said in the Oscar projections, when earlier talking about the Oscar projections, can it keep this momentum going into the end of the year? There is some major behind the scenes drama unfolding around the upcoming film adaptation of the hit YA novel Children of Blood and Bone. The source materials author, Tommy Adeyemi, publicly announced that she will not be supporting or helping market the film, and even posted a screenshot showing that she had blocked the movie's lead actress, Amanda Sternberg. The bizarre part is that Adeyemi helped co-write the screenplay and, to my knowledge, approved the lead casting. I haven't read the source material, so I can't speak on the specifics with such confidence. But as I said on X, situations like this don't happen in a vacuum. Given how involved she was in getting this film made, I have to think something happened behind the scenes that left her feeling unheard or unwelcome. That said, I've also seen people point out that she has a history of these public disputes. She might be letting her ego get in the way here, but regardless of who's right, with this film positioned as one of next year's first major releases, this controversy is almost certainly going to loom over its press tour. Um, Meanwhile, the critical and financial failure of Supergirl is already leading to some finger pointing. A recent Hollywood Reporter article, which I will link to in the show notes, revealed that the film had been testing poorly more than a year before, even before Superman hit theaters. James Gunn and the studio reportedly got involved in an effort to salvage the project, with competing cuts of the film being screened. In the end, the studio's preferred cut supposedly won out by just 2 votes. The report also claims Gunn was responsible for the film's controversial needle drop ending. I'd recommend reading the full article for yourself. It offers a much more detailed look at what allegedly happened behind the scenes. But man, oh man, talk about things only getting worse for this movie. It really looks like it was a shit show from the very beginning, and that this movie might have been always doomed to fail. It does not look good for James Gunn, in my opinion. That it looks like he took over and didn't necessarily help the film much. Um, so I mean, look, I think it all comes down to what I think was ended up being a very mediocre script, unfortunately. And look, I would love for DC to bounce back, but so far this DCU, which is not working for me, and it's shocking to me because how much I have loved James Gunn's previous comic book movies. So this is not a good start, and I really hope that they find a way to bounce back big time with Man of Tomorrow. But we also do have Clayface later in the year, so maybe they'll be bouncing back quicker than we know it. But it does sound like Supergirl was may have been doomed from the beginning. So you remember that report about Jonah Hill's The Cutoff being deemed unreleasable by Warner Brothers? Well, the studio has pushed back, claiming that the decision to pull it from the summer release schedule was about release strategy rather than a reflection of the film's quality. That said, I don't think those reports about disastrous test screenings are completely baseless. To me, this feels like Warner Brothers trying to save face. And as I recommended last week, they should probably just go ahead and dump it on HBO Max. I think it is the easiest and best way to address this situation if I were them. But I did want to highlight that pushback from them, given that I covered it last week. Um, hey, put your money where your mouth is. Let us know when this movie's coming out because I really want to see it now to see if it's as bad as these test scores seem to indicate it is. Some sad news broke this past week regarding the legendary Danny Glover, who announced that he has been diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease. He was quoted as saying, quote, I can live with it in a sense. I'm sure as it advances, things are going to be different and changing, unquote. It's devastating news, but sadly not entirely surprising given that Glover has largely stepped away from the screen in recent years. He has starred in he's started some truly great films and left a indelible mark on cinema. I wish him and his family nothing but the best as they navigate what is unfortunately an all too common disease that's affected too many people in their twilight years. So best of luck to Danny Glover and his family as they face this. And finally, a follow up on Daveigh Chase's tragic passing, as we've now learned more about the circumstances surrounding her death. It has been reported that Chase was living with AIDS and had become homeless due to struggles with drug addiction. According to those reports, she also lacked access to the health care that she could have had to help manage the disease. That answers some of the questions about how someone so young could suddenly die after being hospitalized. It only makes the situation even more heartbreaking. If these reports are accurate, it's hard not to wonder how different things might have been as she received the proper care and support she needed before she checked in for that hospital stay. This is just an incredibly sad story. It's become even more tragic now that we have more information like this has come to light. Once again, rest in peace to Daveigh Chase. Just tragic, tragic way for her life to end. All right. And what else is on my mind that doesn't involve film news? Well, I first of all, let me say, and it's wild to me that I actually totally forgot to mention this in my weekly digest that I wrote up the week before. I hope everyone enjoyed their 4th of July this past weekend. It was a bit strange for me. The history geek in me should have been excited that this was the big 250th anniversary. But as I talked before, my patriotism has taken a pretty significant hit over the past decade. And watching President Trump turn the occasion to what felt to me like some failed MAGA festival did not make me any less apathetic about the whole situation. But I still try to enjoy the holiday my own way. I visited my parents. I watched Independence Day and 1776, which to me felt like fitting ways to celebrate the 4th. I saw a lot of people watching Jaws, but the thing is, I had seen Jaws like during Father's Day weekend, so I guess I didn't get to it as it was kind of easy not to get to it again. But I tried my best to enjoy the 4th as much as I can, even with my current apathetic feelings about the holiday not being particularly patriotic. Now that being said, I do have some unfortunate news, maybe depending on what kind of coverage you like from me. Starting next week, both the weekly digest and the podcast episodes are going to be leaner. Um, Look, I've reached the point where I'm losing too much sleep and still don't have enough time to cover industry news like beyond the box office or new film releases or award season and major events like significant passings. As a result, I'll no longer be covering behind the scenes studio drama or interview highlights. I simply don't have the support I need at home right now to keep up with that volume of content. So expect shorter weekly digest articles and shorter podcast episodes going forward, starting next week. My hope is that what I do continue to cover, I'm still going to be reviewing movies. I'm still going to be talking about what happened this past week in new movies, what's going to happen next week in movies. I'll cover significant awards events, significant passings that have happened in the industry. I'll still make a comment about things that have happened that are also in my mind. I just won't be covering like behind the scenes drama, interviews that came to mind, interesting things about the LA that I wanted to talk about. Like I'm not going to be able to cover those at the moment anymore because of the situation I'm in, and I really do need to like get a little bit more sleep and get through these a little bit quicker. But I do hope that what I continue to cover will still provide plenty of value, and that in time I will be able to return to covering those extra industry stories once life hopefully settles down a bit. And I think that'll do it for this 11th episode. That was a long recording process for me, considering how much I was juggling while trying to get this done. But that is the end of the 11th episode of the Mendez Movie Report podcast. If you would like to see my work, please visit mendezmoviereport.com. If you want to reach me on social media, every single piece of social media that you could think of, I'm there under Mendez Movie RPD. If you want to email me a question, you can email me at author, as in a writer, author lmendez at gmail.com. Until then, next weekend, coming up, Evil Dead, Burn, and Moana. And then I'll finally get my eyes on the Odyssey. As I record this on a Monday, next Monday, I'll finally get my eyes on the Odyssey. But until then, do me a big favor and go watch a great movie for me.